Hey, Sweet Mornings community. It's your short and sweet EA, Dani. I have someone here today who I feel needs no introduction because we have mentioned him several times on the podcast as being the person that has changed my life. So we have Dallas Cothrum in the studio today.
Thanks for having me.
And so, I mean, I feel like we should just get right into it.
All right, let's
Yeah.
do it. Okay, good.
So yeah, you are now CEO of Masterplan Consultants.
Right, I'm
Yep,
back.
you're back. Um, the first company that you maybe didn't start, your dad started, but
hmm
that you took and scaled was Master,
Right,
no consultants.
no consultants.
Yeah.
Right.
So what sparked that interest in joining the family business?
Oh, I guess that's a good question. I had gone to graduate school and got a PhD, and I reached a spot at the UT system where I had tenure,
Hmm.
and I think I checked that box in some ways, and there's a lot of repetition in being a university faculty member that, yeah, the students change, but you kind of have the same rhythm. You teach these classes in the fall and these classes in the spring. And I mean, I was a little bored,
Okay.
but surprisingly, being a historian's really good background. I mean,
Okay.
and I'm good at gathering a lot of facts, trying to figure out what to make of them, analyzing them, and either being able to write about them or talk about them. And a lot of what Masterplan does in terms of working with the public or elected and appointed officials, you have to teach them.
Okay.
So, I mean, it wasn't that hard a transition. I think the hardest part was the hours you work
Yes.
and nights, and everybody cares about their project, and yet we're carrying a whole lot of them. So there's just a lot of responsibility, but I liked it.
So you spoke to the hours of consulting and
hmm
being basically a project manager, being that person, but you were also the business. Okay. You eventually transitioned to being the business owner.
I did. I bought my brother and my dad out, and I became the owner. And I had really, like a lot of times, people that are the founder and then the next generation, there's a change. I know you had Dennis on recently. I think only 11% of businesses make it to a second generation. So,
He
um,
didn't drop that fact.
yeah, I was mindful of that. And now we're at 45 years, and it seems like, oh, well, how hard was that? Really hard. So, my goals were always different than probably my dad's, and he always thought we were one step from death's door.
Uh huh.
And some of that, though, was their own making. Is that they had Verizon and Encore, or then TXU, that's Dart. They had these really large clients that were 50% of their billings. Well, when one of those jobs went away, or there was a problem with the relationship, it does put your business in jeopardy. So I thought we wanted more clients in more places
Hmm.
doing more things. And I didn't, I'm not a real high detail person. And but I'm good at the strategy, and I think I understand why people vote or why they think the way they do. And that's what wins zoning cases. I mean, we're in the business of changing people's minds.
Mm,
So, um, if we can,
yeah.
and it's gotten harder. I mean, we had to continue to evolve.
When you took over that day, what was something that you didn't realize being moving from consultant to CEO?
You can't be friends with people. I mean, you can be friendly and you can be great colleagues and you can care deeply about your employees. But part of that is also like with parents.
Mm,
I love my kids, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to do some hard parenting,
right.
and it's different with your employees, but not that different. And now that I'm the age of of many of our employees' parents, there are times I do feel like, is this boss advice or parent advice? And they need both.
Yeah. How are you navigating the different generations in the workplace?
I think I've done probably a better job about it, and some of that is that I think I try to think about this in how we're dealing with the public on zoning cases. You just have to understand the traditional generation is going to be one way. You got baby boomers, Gen X, etc. You've got all these different groups, and they do bring with them certain dispensations, and I mean I think about that at work too. But I think it's important in the workplace to have a variety of different generations then.
You come across also very authentic.
I try to be myself. Everybody else is already taken.
You gave me a piece of advice that I still carry with me to this day. Don't let anybody grade your paper.
Right.
And that really helped when it came to building up my confidence. I don't know if you
I remember.
I,
I've had people give me that advice, but it's good advice. And that's one reason that I loved refereeing high school and college basketball.
uh-huh.
That for me, the reward was when I was done and I got in the car, I was able to really evaluate how did I do that night. I'm certainly not going to let the fans do it. They're biased. They have no training,
Right.
um, and a lot of opinion. It's exactly like zoning cases, and I kind of treat neighborhoods that way. They have no background,
Mhm.
and they have a tremendous amount of bias ruled by fear, and when people make decisions based on fear, and I'm not saying they're not authentically scared, but that paralyzes them from taking chances. Just like, but when people go on vacations, they'll try all kinds of new things, but they won't at home. They're going to go to the same 6 restaurants and my line, my joke of there are two things people don't like:
Change.
change and the way things are.
You need to trademark that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's really
That
good.
and be nice to mom. Those are the only good things I've come up with.
It can be so challenging handling emotions. And as a leader, you're required to do that. And not just with employees, but in the land use consulting, because you've mentioned it several times now, especially with neighbors. It's people are scared of something new going in their backyard.
Right. And they think, yeah, they are. And I do think it's authentic. I try to have some empathy for that. But I can give them so many examples of people that fought us on these things, and they're the first people there, and they often will convince themselves they were not opposed when I know they absolutely were opposed.
Right.
I think teaching and the officiating were both. I had to be in front of lots of people all the time in my 20s and kind of those formative first professional years,
Hmm.
and you can't work emotionally in those and do those things effectively. I mean,
Hmm.
so I learned real quickly. I remember I had a colleague that said, when somebody makes an A, they're a good student. When they make less than that, you're a bad teacher. Well, that's not true. That's just what students think, you know.
Yeah.
And this isn't, I mean, I remember I'd tell them in class, this is maybe after a few years, I'd tell them, this isn't Burger King. You can't have this any way you like it. Or I would jokingly say, hey, when you get your doctorate, you can teach this class any way you want to.
Yeah.
But for now, we're just going to kind of have to do it, the way that I know how to do it, because that's the only way I know how to do it. I mean, what is that? Measure twice, cut once.
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's good advice. I don't always take it, but and I've definitely gotten better about that as a parent, hopefully as a husband. It's not good to get drawn off sides.
One of my favorite quotes that you will reference many times when you're speaking in front of a group is everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth
Yep,
from
the
uh,
great American philosopher Mike Tyson.
exactly. And now that I've interviewed several CEOs, entrepreneurs, resiliency just comes up again and again and again as a trait that these leaders have. When have you found yourself needing that you had everything laid out, you had a plan, and at the very last minute you had a pivot?
All the time, every time.
Can you go down to one specific one that just lives rent
Well,
free in your
I mean,
head?
we went from Encore being our biggest client to not having them as a client at all anymore, and we're doing fine. I hope they'll come back and we can work for them. I mean, at one point, natural gas drilling was 10% of our business. Now it's
Mhm.
0%. And I had a lot of plans around that. We spent money and we got really good at it, and then it went away. That's the way things are. And I think planning is getting ready for the future, and it's not always actionable. The getting ready part is useful. So
Mhm.
the fact that you spent time planning and gaining that experience and putting yourself in that situation is all valuable. You just need to know that things are going to change. I mean, football teams call it a game plan,
Okay.
but they don't follow it exactly because it's changing in flight. They file a flight plan when you're flying an airplane, and if there's weather, you're going to fly around it or something. You've heard me talk about things too, about von Moltke the elder. that plans rarely survive first contact with the enemy.
Mm.
Well, often the enemy is the market or opinion or whatever it is, you know, but the planning that you do for whatever it is benefits you because you are then ready, hopefully, to pivot. I'd like to think at Masterplan Consultants, we have very adaptable people that are competent and confident and competitive. And so if you have those things, then they're going to be able to change because that's what you did. Your plan was, I have really good people who are going to take care of the customer.
So you have the right people on the bus, as Jim
Right.
Collins would
Yeah,
say.
that's right.
What happens when you have the wrong person on the bus?
Well, I think, and this is something it took me a while to learn. Bad employees are like taking poison. You have to get it out of your system as quickly as possible. And probably most companies are not good at hiring. It's not really anything people teach you, and I think it's mostly learned by failure. Well, failure is a good teacher, but it's expensive in time and money and frustration. And I want to continue to try and get better at it. I mean, I love that Strength Finder tool. I think they should issue that for everybody that signs up for those dating sites. What's your Strength Finder would be really good information. I don't really know, but I think that's probably good advice. Um, it's a good tool. I mean, for us, because we need detail. In certain jobs, we need very detail oriented people. If they turn out to probably to be not inclined to being detail oriented, that's
Uh-huh.
the wrong job.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that that should be given on a dating profile, or that should be a go-to. So I actually had Brian take it when I worked with Masterplan the second time around. I reached out to Jim Brewer and asked him, "Can how much if I were to just buy this assessment?" Brian took it. I thought he was going to be purple. I thought he was going to be the executor. And no, he was strategic as well. He was
Green.
green,
Yeah.
which I'm green,
Yeah.
strategic. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense why we talk about things and then sometimes don't get things done.
But see, the very fact that you kind of think about the color, like this person's blue and I'm yellow. I
Yes.
mean, and it seems like that yellow is the rarest group of people.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't see a lot of the people that have woo and that salesy kind of toolkit. But I pay for that because I have no blue. So apparently I'm like terrible with people and relationships. I don't think that, but I'm aware of that Strength Finder says that I'm not good at it. And I'd say I'm low detail, but my Strength Finder says that I do some of it fairly well, which is true. It's a good tool for the employer, but it's a better tool for the employee.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think furnishing it to employees and them seeing their colleagues is really powerful.
I when you find yourself having, because you're still at a small company, so
Yeah, this is the smallest we've almost ever been. I joke that we're a 45-year-old startup. And I didn't see myself doing this again. I'm not going to say every day I love it because I know how hard this is, and I know how hard it is emotionally, and and how long it takes. That you can only do so many things to advance yourself and move quickly. You've heard me say this before too, that you can do it fast or you can do it right.
mm.
You usually cannot do both of those at the same time, or I can't. I just haven't had a lot of success with that.
No, I think the research does say you can't. I think you're onto something,
I mean,
but
they don't cook a souffle in 2 minutes. That's just not a microwavable item.
well, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
But again, it speaks to you building up, or learning everything in those first. You weren't with the company 45 years.
Yeah, but I was. Certainly my mom came up with the name and I was in the house when it was going on, and I grew up going to, when my dad was on the Dallas Council in the I don't remember when he was on the council in the 60s. I wasn't alive, but in the 70s, I went to a lot of political activities. I've known every council member in Dallas really since the 1970s. So, and I know a lot about sort of institutional Dallas. I mean, I understand how things work or when they didn't. I was there and I started as soon as I could draw, actually, as soon as I could type. I worked in the summer in middle school because I had a typing class. And but as soon as I could drive, I started putting up all the zoning signs and taking the slides, and all that field work is good. So really, I can make a pretty good case that starting in '85, I had billable hours. So now that's a long time.
That is a long time.
North then was, I remember, was Frankfurt. My dad was working on a lot of stuff there and along the tollway. Frisco, he'd do stuff out there for Roger Lawler and Burt Fields and people.
You touched on something that when I talk to people about the podcast, because I'll get asked like, well, of course, what do you do? What makes it different? All of the usual questions because there are a lot of podcasts out there. And I speak to that moment where you were selling to private equity and you had your children in the room with you.
Yeah.
And I explain like that's access to information that many people don't have or didn't get. And so being able to speak to an executive at your level, again, because I'm an EA, I know how gate kept, you know, people at that level are. So being sitting here in this chair and speaking to the community and giving your stories and sharing your advice, that's where my heart lies. And you just spoke to, again, being with your dad and being able to meet all of these people got you ready to.
Well, and then I saw his dad, who ran a number of very large companies, and at one time before the oil crisis was one of Texas's wealthiest people. I do think that I had advantage. I had a lot of advantage, and I'm aware of what they are.
Mhm.
But I also think I've tried to make as many opportunities out of that as I could. I mean, you were talking earlier about like, sales or whatever it
Uh-huh.
was. Well, I joined all those things. I went to all the events, and that's still paying off for the company.
I am such a believer in networking. And, but before we move
See,
there,
I'm a believer in service. Networking is a selfish
it
activity.
is
As a good
transactional.
HP Scott, I'm a believer of enter to learn, go forth to serve, and I really try. And I keep a separate volunteer resume.
Yes.
And I have a really solid volunteer resume of, both being the just low level volunteer and being the chief of the volunteers.
Mm.
So um, that benefits the business too. Not just the relationships, but it benefits me personally. I like doing that.
So, but you spoke to something that I also hear when I'm speaking to someone who doesn't quite believe that speaking to someone at this, I'm just being honest and vulnerable right now, speaking to someone at this level isn't beneficial because they'll come back with, well, they, had someone to help them. They had an advantage, all of this. But I know entrepreneurs, I've met executives who didn't
Sure.
and they're self-made. So if knowing that, knowing because you're also
Hey, I
very
didn't have
open.
anybody to help me be a tenured faculty member in the UT system. Now, I did end up buying out the family business and really remaking it. There was nobody to help me be a successful academic. Nobody in my family had done that at all. I
So
mean,
why do you think you were able to? And this goes to if someone were listening to this and thinking already making a prejudgment of, well, it was a family business, and so of course, he was successful. I don't have that advantage. I didn't. This isn't a family business for me. What would you tell
work
them?
harder. I tell my son, he wants to be a college pitcher. I tell him, do better. Get in the weight room. I mean, there are only certain things you can control. He's not going to be 6'5" or some kind of desirable height. He's not going to hit all those metrics. But I tell you what now, I mean, he is strong and he keeps getting better every year because he realizes, well, we don't have any track record. I played college basketball. There's nobody in my family. I mean, either he's going to do it or he's not. But he's going to do it or not and know he gave his best effort doing it. I think a lot of people spend time. I think this is a Troy Aikman thing about making excuses. Those are excuses.
Uh-huh.
People spend a lot of time making excuses instead of making progress. That's a pretty good line. We should underline that.
Yes, it'll be
Put
a
some
real.
words up there. I just see that, and I hear that too. What people say about that, and I do try to. I'm a good talker, but I also have tried as I've gotten older to be a good listener. So, I mean, I'm not saying I did have a lot of advantages, but I think everybody has to figure out what their advantage is and make the most of it. It may be that they're an unknown. That could be a compelling story. People love that story, rags to riches.
Yeah, they do.
I've joked before that I think when I've gone and talked to a group, and I say a lot of things to make fun of myself, but what I will say, I think we put together one time a PowerPoint, and you're like, "What do you want the title to be?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know, something about how about from riches to riches." I mean, I'm aware of that. It's ridiculous, but I think that's something also about the service part, doing things. I feel like I can help people. I want to. I feel like there's an expectation, and so I'm going to do it. I mean, and that's another thing people don't spend a lot of time on. And I'll hear that too from people. I want to start a business. I want to do like this. Really my first business
Mhm.
was when I was the president of the Tyler basketball referees. I ran for this office, and they were so poorly organized and poorly run and in debt. And I turned it into, it's still one of the best funded organizations. I just figured out how to do it and worked hard at it. I mean, I ended up getting Burger King to sponsor what's still an event that's going on, I don't know, 30 years now.
Yeah.
So those were really kind of my first businesses. I got to practice at it in sort of the not for profit world. So, you want to run a business? How about you chair two or three boards
Mhm.
and get practice with somebody else's business? And I had done that. By the time I bought my dad and brother out, I had chaired private school. I'd been on city committee. I'd done a lot of things. I'd been the director of first years at UT Tyler. I mean, if you go back and really look at my resume, you can see I was making progress at leadership roles.
And
And that's something people should spend time on. Like, I mean, if you're not going to do a good job selling yourself, then that's not good. I
I
mean, you should know your own story.
mm,
I mean, I think I'm engaging and bright. Um, I have a lot of different interests, and I like people. Now, if I don't like someone, I make that pretty clear too,
yeah.
and I certainly don't let them either grade my paper, treat my employees poorly, or my clients.
Mm.
I'm pretty good at drawing a really firm line in the sand, and when people cross it, they'll know. I mean, and I know I've developed some reputation of maybe not being nice. Nice is for people who deserve it. I'm not rude. I don't yell at people, but it's just like refereeing. When coaches would misbehave, I'd be like, "Coach, I'm not going to hear anymore." And you give them a very direct warning, and then there are consequences for people. I'm going to pop you. I'm going to give you a technical. I'm going to let everybody in the audience know you're naughty. And we're going to shoot 2 free throws to prove it.
Were you born with that, or do you think it can be developed?
I think it's probably
Both.
both. I think it's both. But it's also a developable skill. I mean, I learned a lot from, I mean, remember I started refereeing when I was in 8th grade or something. And I can tell you, refereeing the Park Cities YMCA, where the audience is all these leaders and executives,
Yeah.
that's tough to do when you're 14 years old.
I
So
didn't realize you were that young.
yeah, oh yeah. I worked there from the time I was 14 until I was, in a doctoral program in I ran summer camp, a sports camp for the Park Cities Y. It was on the front of the Metro page. This would probably been in like the 90s.
Uh-huh.
But now I look back and like, why in the world would the YMCA have let me, after my sophomore year of college, there were no adults, and I didn't really think of myself as an adult, but I was in charge. I mean, I ran the thing, but I knew how to do it. I'd been there, I'd worked it, and I think they knew this guy's a good leader. He's going to be effective. And I was certainly harder on my peers because they were my age. I was way harder on them than the previous people who worked at the Y were, because I had a pretty high expectation. I knew what the customer was, mom.
Mhm.
I knew what a mom wanted. Mom wanted their kids to be safe and have fun and return safely to them.
Yes.
Hopefully not sunburned. But it was the 90s. The threshold was lower then.
Yeah, I was gonna say people I think wanted to tan
Oh
in
yeah.
the
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah. You had to
90s.
get that first burn in,
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You have managed to now cross over from consulting, but you've grown yourself as a personal brand. You write for the Dallas Morning News.
Yep.
You have been now recognized when you go to restaurants
Yeah,
and
I was on Skylink the other day and somebody, recognized me. I mean, it's kind of fun. I really like the morning news thing. It's fun. I'm a newspaper guy, and I mean, I read the paper every day. Actually get the physical paper. I like reading if I have time, more than one paper. So, and I like to read. I didn't know I would like writing, but I've definitely found my columnist voice. I wouldn't have thought I'd win a journalism award. I mean, I knew I could write, but it's kind of fun to have to write on a deadline sometimes. We need 800 words and we need them in 4 hours. Okay, can I do it? I mean, Sure. Now, I also, there's a part of me too that, my dad is still the youngest person ever to be elected to the Dallas City Council at 25 in 1965. And I write more articles about City Hall than any other. And some of that is one of us has kind of been on duty since 1965 in some capacity about what's going on down there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not going great. And somebody needs to sound the alarm about Daltroit. I mean, and I use that very intentionally, that while the rest of the region is prospering, Daltroit is not.
So if you haven't picked up yet, Dallas writes an opinion column. And how do you find yourself, especially because now, when I was managing a bit of your personal brand, I would see the comments come in on Reddit, on maybe one of your pieces, and uh, people have opinions just about everything, and you're going to have critics. How do you find yourself managing to stay true to who you are in,
I really don't largely. I'm just sort of like the referee thing.
yeah.
And I try to return any phone call or email that I get from people, just say thanks for reading. But I always try to point out, it's an opinion column, and turns out I'm writing my own because everyone else's is taken.
Again, yeah.
And it is interesting that, like, look, it's clearly in the opinion section, and there's some people get really hot and bothered that I can, like, how dare you have that opinion? And I don't think people get quite as worked up about what's the best Tex-Mex or where's the best taco. Those are just fun. What's your favorite movie? Oh my God, I cannot believe that's your favorite movie. How dare you? I
Right.
mean, you think The Sound of Music is terrible. I'm just putting out there, this is my idea. And people don't like it. That's okay. I don't really, in some cases, they're not qualified. And in others, when they are, it's okay for them to disagree. Totally okay. When I was teaching, to amuse myself, maybe after several years, I'd sometimes have, 300 kids at 8 in the morning and 250 at 9, back to back classes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be teaching that survey history class. And so at 8, I would sometimes teach that the colonists were justified and revolting in the American Revolution. And at 9, I would come back and point out the colonists enjoyed a much higher standard of living than any other British person. They already had more freedoms.
Right.
And so I could teach both sides of the argument and understood both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes the kids would be like, they'd talk to each other and they're like, well, which is right? I don't know. You decide. I won't say that I don't read it, or that I don't sometimes read it and it hurts my feelings a little bit, but about, like, that's traveling. Okay, might have been, but we're gonna move on. Next one.
Yeah. And that's all great on the outside, right? It's your personal brand. People are making comments about this opinion. Let's bring it back into the business world. And you have two employees who don't have great opinions about each other. And you have to, as the leader, navigate that, mediate that, referee that.
I will say I was in a really good undergraduate, graduate school environments, and then at UT Tyler, all in good places where there was widespread disagreement and great collegiality.
Mm.
And you can have both those things. And I think that's what the leader has to do. And I know you're seeing people have, I mean, you saw it, and America's just really changed so much, so many times now.
Yeah.
In more often than what we've seen over the kind of course of American history. Typically, you and I love talking about the iPhone is the Gutenberg printing press, and
Right.
then you have the pandemic, and those are really events that are pretty close to each other. Now you've got AI, you got all these things that are going on. Meanwhile, like in this region, you've had the addition of the inland port,
Mm-hmm.
and all these people move here. There's just been a lot of frictionable things happening, and I think all that's interesting, and maybe I can look at it a little bit detached, like an academic, and that's good to be the boss. But sometimes you have to jump in and referee and be like, no, we can't do that. Like, we're in. That's why when we keep our focus on the clients,
Mm-hmm.
that always works. Like, I think my dad always set a good course of saying, we don't have opinions, we have clients. The clients supply the opinion. Now we decided a long time ago we're not going to do SOB work.
Uh-huh. For those not in
That's
the know, sexually oriented businesses.
right. We're not gonna do that, and we're not gonna judge those people, but we're not gonna take that work. We're gonna work we don't think that works well with the churches and the schools and synagogues and people we've represented. But largely, once we accept an assignment, we understand, we're getting hired to deliver an outcome if we can.
Mm.
And that ought to be our focus. We haven't had a lot of these problems, but again, a lot of that's on the intake too.
That yeah.
Is who you're taking in, and are do they, how do they rate on empathy? That's one of those categories on the Strength Finder. And, do they want to have colleagues? Is it important for them in their career development to see, oh man, I can learn from Susan over there. She's a real pro.
Mhm.
Or, oh, I'm going to blow by her. Well, I mean, that's not really being a very good colleague.
So you mentioned something. I was recently at a business summit, and some of the owners and entrepreneurs mentioned hiring people that you've worked with.
Mhm.
So Masterplan is known for hiring former city employees.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've always thought of it's our minor league. We get a chance to watch them. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like,
You
eh,
no, I just love all the sports
yeah,
references,
I don't
but
have
it's
it. I only have American history or sports references. I just don't have much else. I mean, I'm not that interesting, I guess. Maybe I could add some literature ones. We get to see people for years in some cases, and you see them at their worst.
right.
I mean, and at their best. I like to talk about my kids. They're both crushing it. But like I see my daughter, she's cheerleading in college, and she'll be offbeat and gets back on before anybody else noticed. My son went to a college showcase, and the first pitch he threw at the first one he went to, a kid hit a 400-foot shot for a home run.
Oh,
And he calmly asked for a ball and got back up there and got the next five guys out. And I thought that's great poise. And he did that. Super proud of him. Is that and he didn't watch the guy run around the bases. He just got back up on the mound and on the rubber and was ready to go and get the next guy out. That is being resilient. And y'all want my employees to be the same way. So I've seen staff members have a hard time and come back 2 weeks later or a month later in that jurisdiction. They have to see those same commissioners that gave them a hard time, and they're better for it. And so that's who I want. I want people who can give up a home run and be like, this doesn't define me. I mean, I've messed up before. I'm going to do it again. I love to say that, when people ask, well, how often do you lose zoning cases? And I'll point out Tom Landry's like the second losingest coach in NFL history.
really?
And people don't think of him as a loser. He coached a lot of games. We have clients that are timid about losing. And I just don't understand why. Let's press the question. We sure won't get yes for an answer unless we try.
Mm. I love that. And this, I am constantly, it feels I'm better for it. But when I first started working on my confidence, and it, now that we're talking, I feel that some of the work that I hadn't realized getting in front of those commissioners again and again and again and dealing with some of those questions. I worked on the Sam's Club development plan that
Yeah, I had done the zoning on. Yeah.
and eventually, it has a history, but I was grilled on that stand on how they knew they could trust me, that this met everything to the letter of the law.
Yeah.
And I had created a spreadsheet where I made sure that everything was checked in that
And you're
zoning
better for
ordinance.
that crucible.
Yes. Oh my
I
gosh.
can remember the first for my doctoral program, you had to do written exams and then come back. Maybe it was the next semester. There's some time in between and do your oral. So the oral is the last thing. And you go in there and you got all these people that are, and I think my group were all full professors. I mean, they had been there a long. These are very seasoned people. The first question I get asked, I didn't know anything about the subject. I just couldn't answer.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't help but think I'm not ready for this. I'm going to fail. And thankfully, a guy, Ken Stevens, who's a Jacksonian scholar, threw me some like softball to just get me going.
Yeah.
And it worked out fine. You're not going to get them all right. An A, 90's still an A.
I just made my first B in at Syracuse this
You know what
semester.
B's for? Good. A is excellent and B is good. And C is average. And in America, we've gotten so worried. Everybody thinks everything is A excellent. This is why you have people mad about tire shops and car washes. Not everything is going to be Neiman's.
But everything is necessary.
That's right. I want to get my car washed.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to go to a car wash to do it. You hear this all the time. We want more sit down dining. Then why don't you go out to eat more? Because what it shows is what people want is more Chipotle and Cava, and it meets the price point and how much time they have.
Or even just thinking outside the box, some of these car
Or
washes
just
and
thinking.
again, car washes or auto related uses, we want to put them in industrial areas.
It's
As a woman, I don't want to drive out to
totally
the
agree.
edge of town. And I mean, I say as a woman, but most of the people I know wouldn't want to drive to the edge of town.
Everybody wants to do everything near where they work or live. I mean, it's
Exactly.
crazy.
So yeah, yeah. Uh, we can get that's a whole other
It
podcast.
is, it is, and but a lot of this is like how humans behave,
Mm,
and they don't behave rationally. Most people are ruled by fear or disappointment or all these other things, and we've really seen that post-pandemic America has a lot of people that are unhappy, and I understand why. And I don't know that they think about it in those terms, but I do.
so and we have had discussion on this. One of the hardest things about being your EA was that you take those cases where people are angry, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, and that's as someone who
Doesn't
is
like doesn't like,
conflict.
kinda yeah. Well,
When you
you try and help people through it, and, that and they're angry about, like, "Oh, we don't want industrial uses." You well, okay, but, like, "We don't want trucking," but they want their Amazon package the same
right,
day.
right.
It's okay. Some of it I try to help people, educate them. There are a lot of people now, though, that their anger level doesn't allow them to accept they may not know everything. And I certainly don't. Like, I hate that. I mean, my kids are way beyond me helping them with their schoolwork. I can't help on that pre-calc. I mean, that's just too hard. I mean, I can be supportive.
How do you find yourself coming back to you after working with all those emotions that, aren't pleasing?
Well, that's again go back to refereeing. You get in the car and you're back to being you.
Mm,
There is the different me's. In the office, I try to be a colleague with people. I know I'm in charge,
mhm,
and I know as the owner I can make the decisions. But I think people are always stunned at how much information I provide, and everybody's invited to the monthly meetings, and they know where we're trying to go. I mean, I try to be, way past transparent.
mhm.
I think that's authentic, and how I am with my friends is that same way. With my family it is, but the combat Dallas is a different person,
Right.
and I try to leave him out of the car. Combat guy refereed, and when you would get in the car, I really would try to consciously think about like, okay, all that's over now, all the yelling and stuff, and I get in the car. How did I do? And I just try to leave that behind. I won't say I don't sometimes get home and want to talk about this is so outrageous.
Right.
But I've gotten better at not doing that because my lovely bride doesn't care. It's not that she doesn't care, but like it doesn't help me to do that. So it may take me longer to go to bed. I may be a little bit worked up.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I try to like leave it behind. I mean, often what I've learned to do is I will call somebody on the way home and just have a conversation with one of my friends that doesn't live here and spend some time with them. That's really good
Mm.
because I can get back to Combat Dallas isn't involved in that.
We're gonna come up with a different name because I think Kobe Bryant had like the Black Mamba when he was
Yeah.
out on the court, and I think Beyonce is Sasha Fierce when she's on stage. So we're gonna think of
All
a different
right.
name for your persona when
And it
you're
used to
out.
not be as bad.
Yeah.
I mean, people's behavior is so much worse than it used to be. And they expect so much more out of the development team on projects. You got to be more transparent and have a website. Like I think we've tried to do all these things to address how people feel, and
Mm.
we've gotten very little credit for like, oh, but we have a website and we put these signs up and we'll have a meeting electronically and we'll have one in person. I mean, we do all those things and people are just angry. And we can't fix that always. That's an old Vistage rule. You know, you can only change the people in the room. You
Mm.
can't really change them that much either. Sometimes they have to get a dose of the medicine. Is that like, okay, project doesn't happen and I know they think they won, but a lot of times they didn't. Is, you know, they lost out on that opportunity. You know, I invented a term the other day that I really like. There's, you know, NIMBY and YIMBY,
YIMBY.
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, in my backyard. Well, there also, I think, is this thing that cities, um, YAMI, you already missed it
Mm.
because you were in NIMBY. So there's plenty of instances I can think of YAMI, and I think it's kind of a funny term, but you know, it's not. There's a fear of missing out.
Mm.
You missed it. You weren't even aware. You missed that wave, and when you miss out on that, your people are going to be disappointed. It's really hard to catch up.
And not just in business, but like in your life.
Oh,
There are opportunities that will come up, and if you aren't ready, you will miss it.
you will. And that's why, you know, like people ask, well, why do you write these newspaper columns? And, you know, some of it was they asked. And I thought, and I really appreciate the Deckard family keeping the paper open all these years. I mean, it is really important. You know, you want to do something to help your region,
Mhm.
buy the paper, subscribe to the paper.
And watch the local news.
That's right. I think people need to be confronted with some of this stuff. And
Ooh.
and I believe my clients regard what I'm doing is they haven't seen any change. You know, I already most people know I'm opinionated. At this point, I've done this a long time. And if you disagree, you should also at least acknowledge I've got 30 years of experience doing it. I mean, I've done this a long time. Um, I don't mind losing. It's okay. I understand that people get elected to make decisions. That doesn't make them right, though. That just means they were an elected official.
Don't be afraid to be yourself.
Right. I'm not.
A question I've been dying to ask you, because again, I've noticed just every entrepreneur has had someone who has helped them. If that person hadn't met them, that their life may have gone on a different course. And I'm curious, I want to know the name of the person.
Oh man, I've had a lot of people really be helpful to me. Dennis Howard, you know, obviously in the Vistage group, and Todd Albin. I mean, a number of, you know, Jeff Brockett. I mean, I had a
But
bunch of
you
guys in that group that helped me get my business from, I don't know.
but you could have very easily stayed on the tenure track to be a professor. Somewhere along the line, someone
Carl
came.
did.
Was it Carl?
Carl came out and saw me and said, "Hey, we need you to come home. We need you to do this. We need to have this business needs to go on, and it should have a family member doing it." So, you know, I really would credit Carl with seeing that I had some potential. You know, if my dad had asked or something, my cousin Greg Skinner also was very supportive of that and thought that it'd be a good fit. So, you know, those are guys that, you know, I really they saw it before I maybe saw it in myself.
Yeah.
And but like a lot of family businesses, you know, a lot of times people are sent off to work outside the family business where they go
Uh-huh.
they come back. In college I went to as undergraduate at Austin College. One of the Baird family members was there and he had to go wash trucks like 5 days a week at 4:30 or 5 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
So he was somebody that had some privilege, but man, that guy got up in the winter and went and washed truck. I mean, it didn't seem like that great a deal to be a Baird family member. I enjoyed sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's like the, you know, the Marines. He's got a lot of work done before the rest of us are even up.
Yeah.
And here's one of the things that like people don't think about. People that aren't in a family business
Uh-huh.
don't understand it's one of the worst structures. Um, you know, because when you make decisions people don't like, it's everybody in your family. And certainly
Mm,
I've been, you know, I mean, I have people who don't like me, you know, I mean, I mean, they hold you accountable for
right.
how they think you should run it. So, you know, it's easy to observe that from outside, and say, you know, but like, did you put in your 10,000 hours? You know, I love Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
You know, when you've got your 10,000 hours in, and it hadn't worked out, sure, I'm happy to have a talk with you. But until you put your time in, then, you know, I'm not sure that you have. I mean, like, I think, if, and, like I remember when we did the private equity thing, um, the two brothers in Chicago and the guy in LA, we were all liberal arts guys, we found out. We're not business schools guys.
Mm,
We're all kind of broad liberal arts thinkers.
mm,
Um, and that was interesting to me is that there are a lot of entrepreneurs come from non-traditional backgrounds. I mean, I had gone to school thinking I wanted to be a university president. That's the job I thought I wanted,
yeah.
but I was preparing myself for a job to be in charge and have to make decisions and be accountable for them. So, I mean, yeah, I got a different one. I'm getting paid better. If I make it, if we're successful, but we're going to be, because if you hire good people, it's going to work out.
You exemplify one of my favorite quotes is bloom where you're planted, and one of my favorite, I love listening to sermons. And the pastor one time spoke to some of y'all want to be y'all want to be King David. Y'all want to have the throne. Y'all forget David spent all those years being a shepherd, in the field, getting dirty.
That's right.
He's like, you can't skip that.
It takes all those steps, and a lot of people don't like that. And I will say, we've seen that with interns that we've worked with, that they came in like they're a senior vice president.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm not trying to make this generational, but people are impatient, I think. And I see this in my own kids. They don't sit down and read books like I did. I mean, and I'm not saying they can't, but the world is,
It's changed. Yeah.
it's changed, and people do things at such a fast pace. They have a harder time understanding a lot of times. It's going to take me the 10,000 hours, and there's no shortcut to actually performing the work. I think we'll see that too with the AI stuff too. It's great at like B level work right
Uh
now.
huh.
Maybe it'll get where it's A. And I'm working on a column about, um, yeah, I guess I often find myself doing three pieces about what I think is kind of a related theme. So I think I'm gonna do one on a a trio somewhere around academia.
Hmm.
And what started it, my first thought was about blue books. Blue books are coming back,
I read that.
and um, that's interesting to me. And it's because professors have had to figure out a way to keep kids from cheating,
Right.
and that's great. Let me see what you can write. Um, Second, though, and probably more importantly, I think these liberal arts kids and liberal arts schools that teach critical thinking and adaptability, I think those schools are going to be the Amherst or Williams or, I don't know, Wake Forest, or some of these great schools that develop great adaptable young people with minds that can change rapidly and can write and can speak about it. That's how you combat AI, is you have humans
Hmm.
that are more adaptable. So that starts with the best schools matter, you know. I mean, and if you think that it doesn't, it does. I mean, and uh it's, they get better professors, they get better students, they get more endowment money. That's still going to matter. I certainly know lots of people that went to public institutions that are directional schools. Doesn't mean you can't be there, but there's certainly some advantage to going to Vassar or Stanford
Right.
or name schools.
Right.
Even
Dallas.
though I really didn't.
Now, final question. I asked Tom this because he had such extensive knowledge in Dallas real estate industry. He saw it change, and I believe he has a podcast in him too. But if Dallas as the city were a hand of poker, what would it be?
I don't know. I don't gamble, so other than run a business, not a good one. And I certainly wouldn't bet on it. I mean, I'd bet on all the other municipalities. I mean, Dallas is the hole in the donut.
Mm,
Um, and maybe I need to know more about poker. But it's it's bad, and it has not improved, and it has not grown. And The worst thing I think is they haven't acknowledged that how they've continued to fall in the standings. I mean, if this was a sports team, at some point when you just never make the playoffs,
Mhm.
then you have to look at yourself and say, well, we're not very good.
Mm.
I mean, and um, I'm deeply worried about it, and that's why I throw the term Daltroit around, and I don't mean it to be that humorous.
Yeah,
I hope it shocks people,
right.
and they vote. People vote their wallet, and they will move. And look,
They have.
AT&T looks like they're going to leave downtown. Neiman's, they may have some presence there, but not the way they did before.
Yeah.
Little old we moved out of downtown. I can't say I miss it.
Dallas, thank you so much for sitting with us, giving
Happy to be
us,
here.
as always, your opinions.
That's all I have.
We appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again.
Appreciate it.